Now, I live in a place called Bonfaka. It spells Bonfoucta, Bonfaka. That word historically meant people of the bayou or the residents of the bayou, meaning we lived along the waterways, okay? I still live in that historical village, still have lots of families that's here. But I want to take us back in time before the European. Before the European arrived here, our people were living in what you would call a swamp area of West Florida, okay? Today, people identify us as Louisianians. Well, before there was a West Florida, we were in the Tchefuncte or the Choctaw region, okay? History proved that once the Choctaw was in control from the Gulf of Mexico to the Appalachian Mountain. My grandfather, who raised me, they didn't have internet, so the stories I had was not internet story, it was family history being passed down. And my grandfather would take me outside and he would say we owned at one time everything, farther than a man's eye could ever see. He said, but they always kept pushing us and pushing us. They tried to push us off the face of the earth. Well, as a young child, I didn't understand what he was saying. But that was something he would say at least 2 to 3 times out the month. I would hear they tried to push us off the face of the earth. So I wanted to know who was they. And then he would begin to tell me the name of the different European fragments that came here, be they were white Europeans or if they were black Europeans. Because we caught on the word European, we think white folks. And in my village, our old people didn't teach us European meant white people, okay? European meant the people who came from the European countries to our land. So what I would like to talk about today so that your listeners can be Googling while we're talking, okay? Because this day and time we can use technology that I didn't have when my grandfather was talking to me, and we can get a clearer picture. But back then, what we doing with Googling far exceed what my grandfather was able to do to an extent. But he was able to draw a picture in my mind that's still with me today, and I'm 55 years old, but I still can see that picture and that image. So what he explained to me was, here we were, independent, our own governments, living well, until someone came and decided that we should not be in the place that we were in and began pushing us down throughout what we call present-day United States until they pushed us down below the 31st parallel, where I am today. And the French was here, the Spanish had been here, the British had been here, and the Americans had been here. But in 1700s, the latter part, my grandmother and grandfather was in ruling here in this area of West Florida and in living in the Tchefuncte district, which the European classified it, and living in the town or village of Bonfaka. What the Europeans was able to do is begin early changing names. So they start changing names as they wrote books back to France or Spain. And those books show the changing of the names there, but here people don't see the change. For instance, I'm right now in West Florida, but legally by papers, I'm in Louisiana. Now, when did we make it to Louisiana and never moved, never caught a boat, nothing, still in the same place we've been for thousands of years, but we end up in a place called Louisiana. Well, my grandmother and them went to bed one night in West Florida, woke up, and they was in America. How did that happen? It happened because of the European migration, the European laws, which then took over this area, which now placed me in Louisiana. Now I'm gonna go back and fill in them gaps. I just want you to know where I'm at. So now I'm in Louisiana in the United States, but if I would go back prior to 1803, I would have been in West Florida. So when people go to looking for history, and I see a lot of people doing it, they keep including us with a Louisiana story. We don't become a part of a Louisiana story until 1803, okay? And where I live did not become a part of Louisiana until 1808 finalized, well, went to the next level of about 1810, and then by 1818 finalized that we were going to be put into the Louisiana area legally by United States law. Where I live was brought in under decree. Okay? They took, still in Louisiana, they called this the Florida parishes. Okay? So it was this one huge area that was not broken up into the many pieces that is in now. It was taken out and it was put into this separate zone called West Florida. And how we ended up being in Louisiana is because of a coup d'etat pulled by President James Madison and C.C. Claiborne, brought us in by 1808 into the Louisiana region, which present-day New Orleans would have also been a part of West Florida. Everything on this side, the Mississippi side, going toward the state of Mississippi, would have been considered West Florida. Everything on the opposite side of Mississippi would have been considered Louisiana at one time. So when we talk about Mississippi, a lot of people look at the state of Mississippi like it is today. They look at Georgia as Georgia today, not understanding that one time Georgia was the up above part of United States migration down southward, and it considered going across the top of the 31st parallel as it migrated from the East Coast coming this way. And if you go back and look at some of the old stories that the cowboy western pictures, they always talk about going west. Well, west meant crossing the proclamation line of the 1763 proclamation. That's what going west meant. Going claim land that was in Indian Territory. Indian Territory was the central points of the United States, going from the Gulf of Mexico to the Appalachian Mountains. So to get the picture of going west mean going to California, think about going west only meant one simple thing: expanding the 13 colonies into the interior of the Indians' territory. We have been given part history by Europeans, but there is enough of them out there that know the real history, because I've met some. But what we have not seen in our books or in our movies were black Indians. They always portrayed Indians as this here Bill Cody style Indian or the Plains Indian. Well, they migrated more in the plains. Before they made it to the plains, they made it to central United States, from the Gulf of Mexico going up to the Appalachian Mountain level. In that area, we're going to go and talk about a Pacific area called the Southeast United States. Southeast United States were the area where nearly every Indian that was being pushed out of the 13 colony area and up above found themselves pushing closer into the Southeast United States area. So that brought about some mixtures and changes amongst tribes that was already up on this continent. But from my understanding, they all were people of color and of dark color. So, but our ways and our skills and stuff change as we migrate with other natives from other parts, just like we can do today. The food difference is based on what's available in your area, so it changes your culture. So we see a lot of the culture changing, but what we don't see is at the same time we see in culture changing, as the European come in, we start to see color changing. We start to see in European ways brought to the shores. We start to see in differences within the Southeast United States. But what we don't see is the name of tribes that was already here. Like, for instance, I identify as the queen of the Tchefuncte. And people will say, okay, I've never heard of the Tchefuncte people. Well, if I go to historians and anthropologists and archaeologists and say, okay, are you familiar with the Tchefuncte? Someone who is well involved with their field will say, yes, it's called the Tchefuncte era. Now, down here, DOT, in their diggings and findings, they have classified the Tchefuncte to be here 250 BC. I figured we was here longer than that, but prior to that, they talks about the Poverty Point. So my question began, if my grandfather was here, I would be asking him, well, are the Poverty Point people and the Tchefuncte people the same people? Because you move from an area, your name shouldn't have to change. You don't lose your identity. You don't lose your roots. So I would say that they write history to make it look like the ancient people dropped in from somewhere and they evacuated out to somewhere. Right now they're talking about aliens. Well, they write about people of ancient time like we are aliens. We are not here, then we are here, then we are there, and then we disappear again. It was time we start researching our own truth. I took what my grandfather said and I began to research it. 35 years of research behind what my grandfather told me, not what someone else said. And what I find is, I find name changes, I find places moving, and the people ain't never left from where they were. And a prime example, to go back to where I was, when I look at my history, it'll look like I moved all around the world and we never left from this spot. Is the person who has the pen has the power. And they have written us out, they have written us in, they have altered our race. And there's a lot of things that play a part while we don't understand and recognize black people as the true indigenous people. One reason we're doing it is because we have watched too much television. My grandmother would not have a television in our house when I was growing up. My mom, I didn't live with my mom, I lived with my grandmother, grandfather, my aunt, and uncle. And there was no TV. And my grandmother would call it a one-eyed devil. She said she didn't want something that could be in her house and talk to her, and she couldn't talk back to it. She didn't want something that was going to show us something that we couldn't tell it nothing back. Well, the one-eyed devil, now I understand, because as a child, I really wanted a television. But we didn't get that. I was raised in an Indian village without electricity, without running water, without the television, and we got to listen to the radio. Out of that, I thought in my younger days, well, if we just get that television, I can have some entertainment. Today, at 55 years old, I'm thanking God that we did not have that television, because not having that television gave me my elders. I grew up where they had people 115 years old, 103 years old, in their right mind, still walking, still talking. And that became my entertainment as a young person, and I learned a lot. And I've taken that in the last 35 years to go out and see. Were my people just telling me stories and having me to believe stuff that never exists? Because when I went to school and I told people I was a Shatta, they was like, well, what is a Shatta? If I told people I was part of the Shifuncta, well, what is the Shifuncta? Well, to say Shatta and Shifuncta and someone disown you is like saying, I'm from the United States, and somebody say, well, where's the United States? Because that's what Shifuncta is to us. That's our location, where we living in this region. And for someone to say, what is a Shatta? Well, that's like saying, who is an African American and who is a Greek and who is a German and who is Irish. So when people are able to take your identity and your land identity away from you and still leave you in that place stripped, it leads you to search. And I see around America now, people are searching to find out where do they belong. But a lot of them leave this land and begin searching in Africa and other places and have not found themselves here. What I hope to do today is drop a few ingredients. I do a talk show, and like I told you, my talk show is Cooking with Chief and Serving Up History. And I tell people that we all have an ingredient in our life. And when we bring it together, we can cook up this wonderful dish. Because the ingredients is really what it is. Salt is salt and pepper is pepper. Garlic is garlic and onion is onion. Well, in our life, we need to find out what's facts. And go out and get these facts and bring them back. And that's what talk shows are allowing us to do. Bring back the ingredients and begin to talk. And by the time everybody throws their piece of the ingredients together, we end up with this dish. Okay? So the dish that I'm hoping we come out of today on the East Coast is getting people to realize a lot of people that's on the East Coast came from the southern states. Okay? And maybe there was a story that someone told them, but they couldn't find evidence on it because it was hidden. But today, with technology, a lot of this stuff that was hidden is coming out. And it's time we go back and start digging. I hear people call themselves Moors. Well, in my research, because I never knew what a Moor was in my life, never heard it in my village, and as I began to speak and do talk shows and stuff, I heard people coming at me with, well, are you a Moor? Are you a Moor? I'm not a Moor. Moor just means black. I am not the Moor that people talk about that comes from the European country and came here like the Portugal people came here to destroy the black Indians that was already here, or should I say the black indigenous. And, that's a highly controversial thing that I'm talking about, but people who classify themselves as Moors need to realize why did the Spanish bring the Moorish people or the black people or the Portugal people to this area? And as you go back to look, it's self-explanatory within their records. They brought them here with them. They were black Europeans seeking the same thing that the white Europeans were seeking, and that was a new land, a new place, and new riches to embark upon. And I couldn't understand how did even Christopher Columbus be declared a discoverer of America when we were here. So my grandfather and I used to talk about it because I got put out of school at a young age because I would not celebrate Columbus Day. And so I got suspended, and my grandfather told me, don't worry about it. Sometimes you have to get knocked down to get back up. He said, so you just got knocked down in the negative, and you can get back up in the positive. He did not discover America. We were already here. So in my adult days, I decided to go back and see what did Christopher Columbus discover. So what we got to look at, there is a thing called the Christian discovery or the document of discovery. Are you familiar with that, brother?
Sister,
okay. Are you familiar
I'm
with
soaking everything in? But I am not familiar with it. But please continue.
Here we go. We are victims of a Christian doctrine called the doctrine of discovery. I'm hoping, and I'm working on writing a book right now as we speak, to go in detail on how these things affected us and still are affecting us today. The doctrine of discovery was done in 1452. And the doctrine of discovery opened the door for, and that came through the Catholic Church or through the Pope, who passed it on to the King of Spain. And that doctrine declared all people of color, dark, or anyone that was not Christians to be classified as inhuman and paganistic. So that was a worldwide law. So underneath that law, what they were able to do is come into places where people already was there indigenous, but not Catholic or not classified Christians, and declare them not being there religiously wise because they were saying they were paganistic or they were heathen. And then they were able to come in with the Christian law and classify discovery. And that's where the word Christopher Columbus discovered America come from. He didn't discover America as no one was here. He discovered the Christianity forces of America by claiming it for the Christians and for Spain, for the king and the queen. And that's where the word discovery get connected to Christopher Columbus' name. Now, underneath that discovery, what he did is, in the beginning, he wrote back to Isabella and says, hey, these people are godly. This is in the 1400s. He get here in the Americas, not this part, but into the islands of Americas in 1492. Okay, but 40 years prior to that, a law was passed called the Christian Doctrine of Discovery, which right now we have priests who are fighting, well, not priests, excuse that, nuns who are fighting and asking priests and the Pope to help change that. Because that law is still in effect, and it is also a part of the foundation of the Constitution of the United States. That law was said that anyone who were not Catholic Christians, then the discoverers could use them as slaves, kill them, rape them, take their possessions, including their lands and their nations and whatever. Well, by putting that law as a world law, it made not only the Africans in 1452 not classified as humans, but it also made the people in this America not classified. So then when they come in, they saw you, but they didn't see you as a Christian underneath the Catholic Empire, underneath the Pope, the kings, and the queens. So under those type discoveries, we have to start understanding and teaching what they meant by discovery. And some of the people who came in on these discoveries were black, or what we say Moor, because the Spanish called them Moor, which meant black, were some of the black people of the European country who came here with the white Europeans, and they are part of the people who are saying they're the founders of America. Well, those people came in, a lot of them, under acts and treaties that they already had acquired with Spain under the king and treaties that are acquired under the Pope. So those treaties gave them the right to come and take whatever they wanted to. So you find people now, everybody's wanting to move a large amount into the word more movement, but they also have to look at that they also came to this land to take from it also. And I've had people say, well, wasn't this black people here already? Wasn't they Moors already? No, they were not. My grandfather said we were Shatta. And when I go back in earlier history of the expeditions that came here, no one classified the indigenous people here as a Moor. They would also describe them as Negroid looking, but they never described them as a Moor. The Moors come in under a Sundry Act, and the Sundry Act was the act that brought black people in that looked like the black people here, and the Sundry Act put in some specific guidelines so that the black people from there, if they came in and did anything for as killing or capturing or taking of possessions, that they would be protected by the Spanish law of the Act of the Sundry Act that protected them from being persecuted underneath the law of what they was using on the indigenous people in America. Now, brother, can you hear me on that?
Yeah, sister, could you share with the listening audience how far back you can trace your family lineage?
I can trace my family lineage back to when the first people hit these shores, and then back.
Excellent.
But documented when they hit the shores here in what used to be a part of what they call the Floridas and the Caribbean. We got to realize the first area that they was taken into was the Caribbean islands, correct? So if you look at where I'm sitting, it once was considered part of the Caribbean. When they came here, there are documents that they found my people doing trade with schooners and ships, big schooners, which is a ship, and kaijus, which is small boats, that they were doing long distance trade with Cuba and the other islands, okay? So those things are documented in history by the early explorers, that they saw my people here doing long distance trade and manufacturing, okay? So we want to think, when we talk Indians, we want to think that Bill Cody Savage running with an arrow through the woods. You know, like today, people want to keep native people to living in a teepee, which my people didn't live in teepee. We want to make them look like they had no culture, no living standards, no laws, no nothing, no guidelines. That's not the truth. That was done to make them a savage. That was done to go with the paganistic law. That was done so that then they could say there was non-Christian, non-humanized people here. So it gave to the discoverers the right to discover over you. Are you with me, brother? Now,
I am with you, sister. And I just want to, I just wanted to quickly just acknowledge Imhotep Dave. I see he came on a little later than we did. I just wanted him to say, give us a shout out because he was instrumental.
Let him go ahead and talk, then I come back, and we're going to go into how far back we can go, and I'm going to go back to something you put on your flyer. But, Doctor, how you doing out there?
Hold on. 703, Dr. David Imhotep. Dr. David Imhotep? I guess he's not near the phone.
Okay. Well, let's go a step further. You see how far back we can go. I had the honors, I think it was in 2012, I was asked to sit in on a tri-country meeting. And at this meeting, it was held at Dillard University. And there was a gentleman who came in from Bolivia. And then there was another gentleman who came in from New Guinea. And they brought us together because of the similarity in our body structures and features and so on. And I'll send you a link to that actual outcome of whatever came out of it. I saw it online a while back, and I didn't even know it was out there, but I'll send you a link to it. But they brought the three countries together of blackness. And the guy from New Guinea and I could pass for brother and sisters. And the gentleman from Bolivia says, you look like our old people. You look like my auntie. And he was a little fair complected, but he said his auntie was the same complexion I was. And we began to discuss in this dialogue that they had set up, things that Bolivia had been through with the people of color and the things that New Guinea had been through and what I had went through and my people here historically. And our stories was so much similar. And we began to discuss the migrations and things that have happened over the thousands of years, and how we all somewhere connect, and we could feel the connection while we talked because of the similarity and stuff. But I came home from that dialogue, and I was sitting in front of my computer, and I'm praying, God, show me which way to go with this. And some people out there in listening land may not believe it, but this is the truth. The spirits always guide you when you really seek it. And I'm sitting here typing on my computer, and I'd always do a search to see what was out there on the Shatta, because they have truth coming out and they have lies coming out. But I see a lot of white Indians, and I'm going to get to why I call them white Indians, migrating into using the word Shatta when they have historically been using the word Choctaw. And so up pop on my computer, Bolivia. And I'm like, wow, this is strange. Just got through doing this thing on Bolivia, and here Bolivia is coming in under Shatta. And so I began reading this article. I even called Dr. David. I said, Doc, something happening. I'm sitting here at 2 a.m. and up pop Bolivia. And I go to read it, and it says about Shatta Mountain. And if any of your listeners is out there and you want to Google what I'm saying, and why I'm telling you about this, brother, is because I saw what you put on that picture, on that post, and I'm like, I got to tell him what he just did. Okay? So up pops Bolivia and the mountain. So if anyone out there listening, spell Shatta Chata. That's a little different in the way I spell it. We spell it Chahta because the H make the ha sound. Is a sound, not a pronunciation. So it's Shatta. So they have it spelled Chata, mountain in Bolivia. And when I did this, up pops a connection to what we still were doing recently, and that was building and making bricks. Okay? And up popped these huge heads, just like you have on your poster, but they were done with bricks, okay? And this is not in Egypt. This is not in Africa. This is in Bolivia. So I felt something really spiritual there, and I called the gentleman in Bolivia, and I asked him about it. He said, well, Chief, he said, that was why I wanted to meet you, because I knew what the word Shatta meant. And he didn't tell me that when we was doing the dialogue. He said, Shatta Mountain is still here, and you need to come and see it. Because at one time, the Shattas was there. That made me feel so good to know you going back thousands and thousands of years into Bolivia, and here's a mountain called Shatta Mountain with bricks and huge, giant brick monuments made and sculptures with bricks. So here we are known in this area historically as being the first brick makers. Okay, so we made bricks in this area, and we have a strong history here in the brickyard business until the Europeans found ways, or should I say the Jayhawker Europeans found ways to take our businesses from us through laws that was passed. But there are documentation, even in the court records, that my people were the richest brick makers. When New Orleans burned down, my people bricks is what they rebuilt New Orleans with. So that's how deep my history go here, okay? And my grandfather's name's tagged to the brickyards. So I want people to know that the black Indians wasn't savages running through the woods, didn't have no clothes on. We were entrepreneurs doing businesses around the world. Did I answer your question, brother, or do I need to go a little deeper?
So, sister, just so I understand, then what we will call Olmec is also Shatta.
Have to be, because the Olmec head matches that Shatta head that's in Bolivia. Isn't that amazing?
That's, I was intuitively guided to place that Olmec Shatta head next to you, because I was like, you know what? It just looked right on the flyer.
I would have never, my grandfather never told me nothing about no Olmec or no Aztec or none of that, okay? But he told me about Shatta. But what I found amazing was to do this dialogue, okay, talking about my Shatta heritage, and this man talking about the Bolivia culture that has been whitewashed, and then for me to come home and end up pulling up an Olmec-looking head in Bolivia made out of bricks. Wasn't that amazing?
Indeed. Please continue.
So if you have time, or if you're near a computer, type in Shatta Mountain, and you will see the same head like you placed on the side of me, something that I did not know of. But I would ask my grandfather, well, where do we come from? He said, we've been here always. Okay, so what do we own? You own everything. But
we are everywhere.
That's right. So now I'm understanding even my grandfather even better. You getting what I'm saying? Because he was telling me the stories that was passed to him. And I wasn't calculating it at the same level that he was giving it to me at that time. But I did comprehend it and I stored it. But later in time, my grandfather is still walking with me with the stories that he taught me, because that is what have guided me in my research to prove that we are not gone. And with the last breath in my body, I'm always fight to prove that we are not gone. We are not gone. And I'm not going to say that we are no Moors. No, we are Shatta. Okay? So, from my understanding, then, Shatta must go back beyond the word Omad. My grandfather said, my grandmothers were queens. My grandfather were kings. I had someone attack me after I did a catalog thing I was telling you about and said that we Indians didn't use the word kings and queens. Well, let's do this. Maybe modern Indian that man created when they came here didn't use those terminologies. But evidently we use kings and queens, because even in Hebrew time we were using terminology kings and queens. Okay? So we got to look at who is the indigenous people. Who is these modern Indians that they keep talking about? Okay? And why the modern Indian DNA does not match the ancient DNA of the indigenous people? Why? When we look at the word Shatta, I was always told it meant God's people. Okay? I grew up knowing that. That's why I don't classify myself as a Choctaw, because that's not our historical way of saying who we are. And in my area, we have never used that terminology. Europeans use that terminology. Okay? Also in this area, when I look back at, I'm a mound builder. So you didn't call me by many names, but I'm a mound builder. And we still do mounding every year. And it's only one place, and I found this out in my adult life, because I grew up during the ceremony of the dead, and we still do it. Okay? And then as I began speaking and talking to other people in other countries, and give you a chance to go across ethnic lines, I found out that the only other place they do the ceremony of the dead is in Mexico. Okay? And I was told when Katrina hit, I left here before it hit, and I was in Arkansas and took a lot of my people there, and we were there for 18 months. But when October came, it was time to prepare for the ceremony of the dead. And no matter if no one house was built back or whatever, we migrated back to do what we have done for thousands of years. So one of my members asked me, she said, you think the ceremony of the dead is going to be canceled? I said, it's never been canceled in thousands of years. It won't be canceled. I said, by the time we drive down there, you're going to find lights burning in the woods as usual at the burials. And it was. And even though they had trees all over, the elders in the 80s and 90s, they got out there and found a way to do a safe ceremony. And when I got back and I saw it, a white gentleman from the Beaumont family of Beaumont, Texas, lived not too far from us. He grew up in this area, so he knows that we're Indians, because a lot of Indians work for the Beaumont family, okay? He said that he had the people from Mexico who had came in to work on cleanup in these areas down here after Katrina saw our ceremony, and he said they was down on their knees giving honors to the ceremony. And he thought it was strange, and he said, well, we do the same ceremony on the same exact day. So he told me about this story, and I told him, well, I experienced some things in Arkansas with people who were Mexican Indian, and they acknowledged who I was because of the word Shatta also. So me and him began to talk. And I started talking to other people who celebrate the ceremony of the dead to find out we all still do the Feast of the Dead. And the only other place do that is Mexico. So now we're going back to that OMAD thing, correct? So
isn't that beautiful? That is powerful. Thank you.
And so when I look at migrations maps and stuff, some people said in as early as the early 1700s, latter 1800s, latter 1600s, that they had put us with the OMAC back then because of something they saw in the migration pattern, okay, of it being the same people. That's why I say, who says Poverty Point is not a part of Shafunkta Shatta people, okay? I don't think everybody in Poverty Point just packed up and moved and just disappeared. And they were mound builders. You know, wherever you see the mounds. Right now, Louisiana DOT, Department of Transportation, was doing a project, and they gave me a letter and a packet that dated the mounds to 250 BC that they had accredited to the Mississippian culture. The Mississippian culture come way after the Shatta culture, okay? So when you're looking at these scales, I don't see all these other names of these newly federal recognized tribes and modern day Indians. I see the ancient Indians and the ancient names. So I began asking anthropologists and archaeologists a question. If I go get my DNA taken, would it match the modern day Indian? And they said no. If I take the modern day Indians and compare them to the ancient bodies that's being found, would it match? They said no. Okay? So I said, well, who matched the ancient people? The modern Indians, we need to realize, is what they're calling it, modern day Indians. And the ancient Indians is who they are. I've been told that if you would do an ancient DNA and then you do my DNA, it would match. Okay? I had an anthropologist who tracked me down through LSU University, and this gentleman is well renowned. And he found me because he said his research brought him and led him to me and my people. So there are anthropologists and archaeologists and historians, just like Dr. David did, have written and did work and say, okay, well, where are they? Well, here's where we're at. We're not trying to be federally recognized until after Katrina, somebody kept saying you need to do this so you can help your people recover. I'm telling you it didn't work because it's highly racial. And you got to go through too much, and you have to give them all of your information and everybody in your family name and all this stuff. We done been through that in the past. And when they done took court records to track us down, and then once you know anything, they done erase your history. And then you didn't end up with some kind of sickness and you dying somewhere. That's called eugenics, okay? And we are a victim of eugenics. Well, eugenics was something that a lot of your bigger business people of this here United States as we know it, or Wall Street, developed along with some scientists to eliminate the people that was black, okay? And I'm going to speed up. By 1924, it became to its perfection. And eugenics was practiced and brought to its perfection here in the South, here in Louisiana, present-day Louisiana, and used by Hitler against the Jews, okay? So here we got eugenics. We got Racial Integrity Acts of 1924 that allowed by law to finish erasing us and putting us in a one-box system, and, you know, of black, and then the next box is white. You only had two races, black or white. Even the Indians that so-called, the modern Indians that's federally recognized today, at one point in time, if you look at their records and you go back, they fell into a white box. And the darker Indians had been put and placed in the black box. So you only had two boxes. You didn't have a box that said Greek or German or Irish or Shatta. You had two boxes, black and white. And the red box was always being subdivided into those groups, okay? So we have to really go back and look at what the Racial Integrity Act did in the 1900s that capitalized off of what was done in the 1800s. And then we got to walk over back to the 1700s. And then in the 1700s, you're going to start to find that you got people who came here under the Sangre Act. And they were people of color. So they've always played the people of color against each other. And a small minute of the people of color will excel, but the mass majority will hold each other down. And the whiter Europeans end up taking over control from one country to the next. Now, some people may say that is a racial statement based on whoever they are out there in listening land, but it is racial. It was race that was used against us. And all I'm doing is taking what they did and bringing it back out to the public. So if it's racist, it's not me. It's who did it in those years. I cannot be blamed for the 500-year plus history that is available for you to be able to see how race was used against the people of color. So I'm sure the word OMAC and all of this go through a name migration, just like we go through a color migration and so on. That's to lose you in time. But I tell my members, my grandfather taught me under this huge oak tree that's about 1,000 years old. And he said that tree, you never work with the tree from the leaf. You can't even tell if the tree is sick by just the leaf. It's what's going on with the root of the tree is what determines the strength of the trunk of the tree, which determines the nutrition that makes it to the leaf. We as people of color are trying to work with the leaves. We're not trying to dig down and work with the roots. When we start using all the latter part names, we're dealing with the outer part of that tree. We're not dealing with the root of it. What is the root of the tree is what we need to be trying to get back to. What is the soundest document that's out there that justify who was here? And that's where we need to start from. And then as the tree goes up, it branches out to many branches. Those many branches can carry many names. But it came from that root, from that tree, from that trunk, and it branched out into other names. It branched out into other places. Now, what am I talking about? Let's go back into time of the early 1900s, when these Europeans were building Wall Street to the max. They then began to create jobs in northern states, in western and northwest states, companies that will draw people from the South, because the South was the target since the 1700s. They had been sitting down trying to figure, how can we get these people in Southeast United States to leave and go elsewhere, voluntarily or by force? The removal took away a lot of Indians and also Africans from the region. Also, colonization took away a lot of people from the Southeast United States and took them to West Africa, to Sierra Leone and Liberia, okay? But it does not mean wherever they took them, they didn't come from this place. This is still their roots. And we need to focus on your roots. But a lot of people trying to get to Africa and they have not connected to their roots here. I don't think Africans came here bringing drums. I don't think they came here keeping their same spouse that they had when they was over there. So there were some intermingling and there was some cultural exchange. But we need to look here before we try to look there. Because that's like trying to jump from the root of the tree and just go pick a branch anywhere, and it may not be where you branch to. So let's go to the 1900s. People left from here and went to California. People left from here and they went to Chicago. They went to Michigan and all of these areas. Are these people no longer a part of the southern region? But what we got to realize, as they were moving out, industries was moving in, taking their land and their farms. Because in Southeast United States, different from any other area, we were having land patents under the United States, okay, given to us because we were the original people, okay? And acts of Congress, which was protected under the law of the land, which was given to us. Let's use a group, for instance, the Washita, and let's use the Empress, for example, okay? I've had people talk to me about the Empress and so on and so on. I would say the Empress is part Chata, okay, of this area. I would not deny it because she was with my mom and them a lot. But I also know that her document did not come because of her royalty of Indian. Her document came because of her royalty from being a descendant of Spain. And what we have to understand that the French and the Spanish was two sisters' children. So that was European kinfolks fighting over here on what they were taking and stealing. And today in families, black and white, when the older people die, the children fight over the possessions. That's what the French, the Spanish, and the British was about. And then when we look at the people who formulates call America, they're the rebellious ones who didn't want to pay taxes back to their country that they lied to and came here. So they always broke treaties. They broke promises. So the same people who become the American people, it's also the French, the British, and the Spanish. Kinfolks. Kinfolks. Fighting over somebody else's possessions. And we have become a victim of that. My uncle fought in World War II and Korean War. Prior to him, I got people that fought in the Civil War and all of that other stuff on both sides. And when I asked my uncle one day, why was he so gung-ho about every time he put up a brand new American flag? And I said something negative because I'm flip-mouthed. as a kid, and I would just say whatever I thought, and it would get me in trouble. So I told him, I said, but that flag ain't for us. That's the people who stole from us. Don't that go along with Christopher Columbus? And my uncle sit down and he told me, I fought for that flag every 50 star when I went into World War II in Korea to protect my people on this land. That is just as much my flag or more, because my people was here before that flag ever was made. He said, so that flag represents me, it represents you. You are still living on your soil. And I fought for that. Made a major change in my life. And even though my uncle is dead today, I still bring to his grave 2 flags because he fought in 2 wars. Okay, with no harm to anyone's culture or religion, because culture and religion and politics destroy friendships and families. But I have to touch on that topic, okay? First of all, there was this huge African movement of going to Africa. But I see the people that went to Africa, they come back here to this land. I'm not trying to go to another land. I'm connecting and staying connected with my land here because this is mine. And I would like the younger generation to feel that they are part of America, no matter what this new name is, because we have been through many names. So it's not the name, because the name is only a branch. But the trunk of our roots is here. And I would like us to be proud of being in thus America as the people black and building our communities. And we don't have time to fight one another, kill one another. And the biggest gang we need to get is to gang up together and push knowledge. And like I said, cook up them doggone recipes that we are not cooking up. But every time I see a person of color killing another person of color, I see that the mechanism started by the colonization is still in effect. So we need to advocate to our people that we cannot be turning, like Dr. Lowry used to say all the time, we got to turn to each other, and we got to stop turning on each other. And not only turn to each other physically, but we need to be turning to each other for spiritual strength. And we need to be turning to each other to unite our economics. You know, if we take and pledge to put $1 per person of color, no matter what age, into a fund that will build new housing, buy back our land, bring our people out of the jammed up, clustered project housing. I don't like the word project because it means somebody was working some kind of eugenics there and they were studying you. Put people back with the land. We wasn't meant to be in a project or be a project of some scientists to study how do we live and we stacked on top of each other like a bunch of rats to be studied. And I don't believe that indigenous people need to be on reservations, because reservations was once underneath the Department of War, which means that is still today prison camps. Now, some modern Indians don't like when I say that, because they're proud to have their casino, and they are proud now to be the next generation of raising and selling marijuana. You know, where people of color is in prison and been dying and losing their property because of marijuana. Now I look in America, these same people have changed the laws again. See, the laws keep changing. So now what was illegal for people of color is becoming legal for the modern Indians and the Europeans who have money, who can push legislation and make it legal for them and their children, so they don't have to spend 30 years or the rest of their life in prison or in a cemetery because of some marijuana. And I want people to understand, I don't smoke marijuana, never did. But I have seen that used to destroy the people of color in their community. Okay? So what I would tell this generation is, we don't need to even get high right now. We need to get knowledge, okay? We need to be seeking knowledge. We should be having conferences around this country. I was telling you in a joke last night, my daughter said, you know, Mama, why you can't finish getting a documentary out there, why you can't write a book about what you're talking about, is because who's going to sponsor you when you're talking about everybody, you know? And I'm not talking about everybody in the negative. I'm just pointing out where we all have faults. I have faults too. My fault is I am down here in Louisiana trying to advocate for my people and other people. And my fault is I'm financially not stable to do that. But when I look at us as a people as an overall, we are financially stable. So we hinder each other. And then there are people like Dr. Imhotep who are very knowledgeable out there. We hinder people like him from being heard and seen. So what we need to do with this younger generation is we need to stop trying to do three things. We are one group going to church every Sunday trying to go to heaven. And no, let me change that. They go 7 days a week, some of them trying to go to heaven and can't deal with what's here on earth. So they losing their time. Because if you can't get it right here, you can't get it right there. And then we have another group that is doing the same thing the Europeans have done. I was sitting down reading where you got these black ministers I think it was like 3 or 4 black and 3 white. When you calculate the money they bring in per year, they bring in $100 billion. Okay, if the church is bringing in $100 billion, then the church ought to be the main welfare system to help in the communities where these churches are established. Okay? But we're letting them buy airplanes and build these huge mausoleum of a church when nature is what God created, and the better to be out here in the nature than come up in another building. So we're building buildings that does not house people, and neither of those buildings house God. So who are we building these big mausoleums for? God don't need the house, and you can't live in that big building. So we need to redirect where we are raising our money and where we are putting our money at in America. And we need to, whatever communities we are in or whatever leadership we're in, the leaders, including myself, must be accountable to their people for whatever they put forth in their trust. Okay? So the younger generation looking at the misuse of the generations before them, and we now have to get back with the younger people and help them to formulate an agenda, because we're a long ways from what the civil rights movement was intended to be. The civil rights movement wasn't intended for us to take away from our community. It was intended to empower our community. And I look at the things with the Black Panther, they was trying to empower their community. And whenever we start to empower our community, some negative come forth. Is either someone coming to stop us from empowering ourselves, because if we empower ourselves, then some people are not going to get rich off of us. And then the next thing is, if we empower ourselves, they're scared we stand up too strong. And that has been a fear from the day that they did the emancipation, afraid that people of color under the emancipation would rise up against the European whites that had did them wrong. But I lived in a part of Louisiana where the slave owners were not only European whites, but they also were free people of color who owned slaves. So when I look at the slaves and the emancipations, which I'm not emancipated, and neither are you all up there, because if we was emancipated, we would not be dealing with the police brutality, harassment, and the killings and all of the other stuff we're talking about in this country. So we still looking for emancipation, far as I see. But to get emancipation, we as the older leaders and the younger people coming along have to look at that document I talked about earlier, that even the Catholic nuns are looking at. And they have also went to the UN and say this must be removed. And these are white nuns. I read that day, 80% of the nuns are standing behind this. Where are we? Because if we as talk show hosts and historians and people of color who are afflicted by these laws, and we don't know about them, then we cannot guide our people. Then it make us blind leaders leading the blind, and we all going to fall in the ditch. So we all got to help each other learn here so we can come out of darkness. But the document that I think the younger generation and the leaders of this time need to be looking at, we need to be seeing how much is this one piece of paper that is called the Doctrine of Discovery, which is still in effect and still a part of the United States Constitution and need to be abolished and denounced. Okay? Did I answer your question? I would like everybody to send me an email as they read, whoever are listening, my email address. They can send it to cookingwithchief@gmail.com. cookingwithchief@gmail.com. In the subject box, make sure you say is dealing with the Doctrine of Discovery. And let's get back together, brother, and do another show on nothing but the Doctrine of Discovery. But let's get our audience to reading about it so that they can be able to better explain it to the younger generation. That document is what got people of color around the world still oppressed, because it was an oppressed document. That's what we need to do. That doctrine been there since 1452. But if you look in your research, we have not had the opportunity to go before Washington as people of color, the people, and address our plight. We went there for civil rights, and the Indians have went there, but we have not been there as a unit. And there were some in place called the Freeman's Bureau, something like the Indians Bureau, and it was disbanded to keep people of color arguing their point. Are y'all familiar with that?
Right, exactly. That's true.
So the Freeman Bureau was about free people of color. It was not about slavery. It was about people who were dark, who was already free.
True.
Okay? So we don't have a Freeman Bureau anymore. Maybe the United States needs to bring back, instead of asking for reparation and all this, why not ask to bring back the Freedom Bureau that was disbanded? Because the Indian Bureau was being neglected at one time too. But until Europeans who had been hid, them $5 Indians, y'all know about them, right?
Right, exactly.
Do it and hid over there to be able, because they were poor over there in the East Coast, right? So they came live with the Indians so that they could survive, because they were starving and dying of sickness. Well, they're the people. Children now are federally recognized as Indians, and the people who were already here got kicked into the Freeman role, and then they got kicked all the way out. And that's on the reservation and off the reservations.
That's true. And like you mentioned, eugenics, earlier, and Walter Pleckett, he came up. Huh?
That's him, Walter Pleckett.
Walter Pleckett,
His funding from people like Kellogg and Rockefeller and all of these type people. So they were going to benefit off of dehumanizing us to get us off our land. They were going to be able to buy up our land or get it given to them under grants of the United States to be able to open up their corporate companies. The same thing they did in Liberia, the same thing they did in Sierra Leone, and the same thing they're doing right now in Africa. We sit down and stop being hoodwinked. Now, in my area, the Catholic Church locally have apologized publicly in the media for not allowing us to identify ourselves and was being identified. And they have did reconciliation mass. And right now in my area, the Catholic dioceses are having what they call racial hominy, okay? Which means they are going in and dissecting the history, because a lot of Catholic people are living under these laws and don't even realize they was in place either. So, I'm going to go back into the Bible and say, my people are perished for the lack of knowledge, my people are ignorant for the lack of knowledge. We all, at an extent, have been victimized by knowledge being kept away from us, okay? So, one way or the other, it's going to take the black and the white standing for the truth, okay, that the truth come out. So, it's not a black movement, it's a truth movement. And when the truth come out, then I could see healing really happening. Like I told Kellogg when I spoke for them for the healing conference in 2012, healing got to start at the root, because that's where the sickness is at. We cannot be out there trying to put some plant food on the leaf thinking it's going to give nutrition to the root. We got to put the nutrition at the root, and then it will actually abort that which is too sick from the tree, allowing new leaves to grow and more healthier, okay? That's where we're at. We're at strengthening ourselves from the root. So we got to go back in history. And then, I'm hearing black folks saying I'm getting off the grid. I'm looking on the internet just cracking up. I'm like, what is these fools? If you get off the grid now, you don't have no history, no culture to pass to the next generation. Why are we researching? And if you don't put nothing out there, there's nothing for no one to research and find. Okay? My people was not off the grid is why I can find paperwork. So we need to stop talking these cult-style movements and talk unity and empowerment to build a nation back, okay? In the midst of all what's going on, we're dividing each other with all of these cult-style talking, and we're running our own people away, okay? Instead of them coming to us, they say, look, I'm getting away from that nut. Because I'm seeing that black folks coming up with all these different theories. And I'm like, okay, what do they have factual? And a lot of them living in a housing complex or living on some type of government assistance. So if you're saying you're getting off the grid, what about your welfare check? What about your Section 8? What about your food stamps? What about your child health care? And the leaders need to stop leading black folks to talking about getting off the grid when they don't have an economic base to get off the grid too. You understand? Where's your farm so you can feed your family? Where's your health care when your child gets sick? So we need to stop giving an imaginary get off the grid, okay? And I understand in desperation sometimes we take desperate measures, but we need to stop taking desperate measures with the future of the next generation. We understood African American because some black leaders argued a point that they didn't want to be called Negro. And we stuck today on African American. And I'm furious because it's, to me, a biggest racist when blacks get up there and just classify everybody of this color African American. They just kill my history like the white men have done. I'm not an African American. Okay? So we got to stop talking in them same two color boxes. We got mad because the white man had a box, and we will go create another box? How many people in our leadership really understand the Racial Integrity Act and Dr. Plucker and have read his letters and documents that you and I have read? So that's what we need to do. We need to create some symposiums and dialogues to discuss the in-depth of eugenics, because eugenics goes down to the roots. Am I right about that?
Yep, that's right.
That's why you see me talking about this tree. Okay, so they knew how to destroy the limbs, the branch, and the leaves by changing that and disconnecting you from your roots.
Yep.
So what our job should be is to do some lectures, do some things, do some documentaries, and put these things out there. Unite our money for something like that. I unite my money on what I'm doing. We need to unite to educate. I have over 5 terabytes of stuff like we're talking about right now, okay? Now, to produce that stuff, it takes money. Why we're not producing money to bring education, what I was saying earlier, I'm not down in the church or none of that. I'm not even down in the ministry. I'm just being factual. Why we're not taking millions and billions to get knowledge to our people, besides trying to tell them about going to heaven? Because they now preaching a GPS to tell me how I can get to God, okay? But he can have the power to help me educate myself here on this earth how to be a good citizen. Because you can't teach me how to be a good servant to God, who I've never seen, and I believe very much in God. He said himself, how can I love something I've never seen? And I hate my brother who I see every day. We need to be uniting money to help with our brothers and sisters and show God in us to our brothers and sisters on this earth and underneath the United States. If that's what the banner is over us today, and that's what the name of it is, United States, and on the United States I stand. This is my country. It was my country before it was United States. So whatever name they tag on it, that's me. So when I'm talking against the United States of America, I'm talking against me. Now, what politicians we put in office, that's our problem, because we have a right to take them out. All we got to do is start taking and doing recalls around this country on Democrat and Republican, because now one of them ain't representing us, black or white. They in there for self-gain, okay? And if we start taking some of these politicians out, like we need to do right here in Louisiana for a governor I didn't vote for, but black and white voted him in 2 times, and he done took him to the doghouse. You know what I say? I live on my own land. I plant my own garden. He can't starve me to death. I got my own water system. He can't turn my water off. You see where I'm at? Now I'm looking at people talking about boycotting Louisiana and how much money Louisiana going to lose. Louisiana ought to lose money if they're racist and a bigot. Okay? And we need not let leaders like that be in office. Because if we would come together, we could take them out. Together we stand, divided we fall. That was the British motto, right? Divide and conquer. So we need to come together. And we need not dictate each other their religion or their political beliefs or whatever, but we must discuss them, okay?